Hello there and welcome to CGTN's Global Business. I'm Lincoln Humphreys and here are the headlines we're tracking for you this hour. Price trends. China's consumer inflation edged up in June, though at a slightly slower pace, while producer price growth accelerated. AI push. The ongoing 25th China Internet Conference is expected to lay the groundwork for AI-driven digital transformation across industries. And growth forecast. The IMF raised China's growth forecast but lowered its global projection, a clear vote of confidence in the country's expansion. Got a great deal of expansion on the Chinese mainland markets today, where equities fell this Wednesday. The Shanghai Composite was down by nearly 0.5%. The Shenzhen Component closed about 1.9% lower. We'll take a look at the other markets around the region and how Wall Street closed overnight. We'll start with China's latest inflation numbers. The National Bureau of Statistics reports that consumer inflation has stabilised at 1% in June on an annual basis. That's slightly weaker than the previous month, dragged down by food prices, especially pork. The services sector has shown strong momentum, with prices of transportation and telecom services up more than 4%. The producer price index continues to rise, growing 4.1% year on year in June. The increase is mainly driven by higher production costs in the mining sector and rising prices of key raw materials, including metals, chemicals and energy. China unveiled a new 5-year plan to bolster the country's tourism sector. The plan, approved by the State Council, targets 8.3 billion domestic tourist trips for 2030, with spending totalling $1.13 trillion. It also sets a goal of 190 million inbound tourist visits in 2030, with annual spending totalling more than $150 billion. The plan calls for developing cruise and yacht tourism, advancing the construction of cruise ports and public yacht marinas, optimising cruise routes and products, and steadily expanding pilot programs for yacht consumption. It also emphasises implementing paid leave systems for employees, encouraging flexible and staggered vacation arrangements, and supporting regions with suitable conditions to promote spring and autumn breaks for primary and secondary schools. The momentum of China's inbound tourism continues, driven by the expansion of the visa-free policy to more countries. To attract travellers seeking deeper cultural experiences, Beijing is rolling out tourism options that combine cutting-edge technology with rich cultural offerings. Xia Hui has the story.
Beijing has unveiled its first top 10 new scenarios for inbound tourism, blending trendy shopping, wellness, and high-tech industrial tours with the tech meets China chic appeal. More than 300 travel operators from over 40 countries have already sealed deals worth nearly 45 million yuan, both online and offline.
I think it's very changed the China. It's more easy, the entry and the buy connection is very, very easy. Now I buy this present for my family, for my office, and it's very easy. I pay with Weixin. Yes, very convenient.
At a recent event, 17 countries and 30 Chinese provinces showcased local specialties and innovations. Beijing's 798 Art District brought VR cinema experiences, while other regions offered intangible cultural heritage food and one-stop tax refund services.
Beijing has pioneered a citywide one-stop tax refund model, offering immediate refunds upon purchase and cross-regional mutual recognition. We also launched the country's first online duty-free refund store for overseas tourists. We have basically built a 3-dimensional tax refund service system covering core business districts, key hotels, bank branches, and international exhibitions.
In the first 5 months, we received over 2.6 million inbound tourists, a year-on-year increase of over 35%, and tourism expenditure exceeded 25 billion yuan. Going forward, we will promote the development of new cultural tourism productivity through public service upgrades, industrial improvements, and market regulation, while advancing the application of technology in cultural tourism scenarios.
邵薇 CGTN Beijing.
Now let's glean some greater insights on what the latest data reveals about the country's economic state. We're joined by Shifan Qi, an associate professor at Peking University School of Economics. Thank you for joining us on the show. So with CPI easing in June while PPI improved, which sectors are likely to see margins squeezed or strengthened, and what does this divergence reveal about China's recovery?
Thank you very much for the invitation. So let me first recap of the data. So for CPI in June, we see it rose by 1.0%. The PPI went up by 4.1%, whereas the industrial purchasing prices went up by 6.4%. So from this divergence, I believe there are two reasons behind it. First is that it is generally true that industrial prices respond faster than consumer prices, because it's like we first have production and then we have consumption. So that's the first reason. But the other major reason is about price elasticity. So we still see that even though the producer prices are rising, the consumer demand is not that strong yet. So based on these two facts, I think the sectors are likely to get squeezed, like the downstream consumer-facing sectors, where we are highly competitive, such as automobiles, food and beverages, apparel, daily consumer goods, etc. While for other sectors are likely to get strengthened, such as especially the upstream resource sector and technology-related industry. So for the broader economy, I think we are indeed seeing some recovery, and that is more like a steady recovery, but it's still some kind of uneven because we see this kind of imbalance between the consumer and the producer side.
For the remainder of this year, do you see China's inflation staying low but positive, or perhaps moving higher? And what will be the key drivers and policy implications either way?
Well, I would agree that it's most likely to be low but positive. On the other side, I do see some upside risks. I believe there are three key drivers. First is about the energy prices, and especially the oil prices. So for basically, we need to know whether this kind of the rise in the energy prices are likely to be transient or persistent. So starting from early this month, from early July, we are seeing downward pressure on the energy prices. But in June, we do see that on the consumer side, the transport fuel prices contribute to CPI by having a 15.3% growth. Well, even for the producer side, we see industrial purchasing prices rise by 11.8%. So that's a big contribution to the inflation growth. Well, on the second sector is about the second area is about high tech, and especially AI related cycle. So why does that matter for consumer prices? Because as the AI rates heat up, so a lot of sectors like the memory chips are likely, those demand are likely to rise, and that will also affect the consumer prices. For example, like last month, we see that Apple announced the price increase for a lot of consumer products, including Mac and iPad. For a lot of the Chinese producers, they are relatively slow in raising these prices because of the weak consumer demand. But ultimately, the prices are likely to pass on to the consumers. And the third important factor, that's, I guess, the most important area, is about whether we can have a broad-based economy. That is especially true for household purchasing power. So if we do see this kind of growth in the economy is passing on to consumers by having low employment and also higher consumer income, then the consumer prices are more likely to give up. But at least for now, I believe that the trend is not that clear for the third factor.
So this summer, which new consumption models or niche growth points, such as experiential tourism or green upgrades, best illustrate how household spending is trending and transforming in China?
Well, before answering that question, we need to first look at which population sector is having the highest consumer spending. And that by far is the young people, that is for people aged between 20 to 35. And among the young people, it's the women that contribute the most to this consumption growth. So we need to look at what's likely their consumption pattern. So from the data, we see that they are spending less on traditional luxury goods and more on experience, quality, health, convenience, and green upgrading. So with this fact, I believe there are three areas which are likely to contribute to this growth. The first is experience-led tourism, and that is for a lot of the young people, and especially the women. They not only just visit the scenic spots, they want to have a combined experience. For example, they may simply go to another city to see a concert, to watch a concert, or they may go to another city to see some sports events. And indeed, over the past year, from 2025 to 2026, we see that the concert consumption is rising by 60%. So that's a very major growth. And the second aspect is also related to experience goods, is about the nighttime and a lot of events. So that spending can also be relatively important, especially during the summer months. And the third sector has a lot to do with government subsidy. So even though a lot of government subsidy for electronics are trailing, we are still seeing some relative sustained growth in green and smart upgrading. For example, back last year, we see a huge growth in trade-in sales, and we also see smart wearable products. The consumption of smart wearable products rose by 40%. So I believe the three sectors are likely the major niche growth points.
And how about tourism trends as the new tourism 5-year plan meets the summer travel surge? How are local cultural and tourism markets adapting, and what product or infrastructure upgrades could make tourism a more durable pillar of consumption in China?
Well, I think for that, we need to understand two concepts. One is the traffic economy, and the other is the product economy. So relatively for now, China is doing relatively well on the traffic side, meaning that we are having very strong traffic in terms of, we see a lot of people are going to visit different areas, and especially during vacations, we see almost every major tourist attraction in China are very much crowded. So in order to have sustained growth, these not only the government sector, but also a lot of the tourist attractions needs to transform these traffic into income, into basically money. So for that, I believe that one thing is particularly important, that is product differentiation. So why is that particularly important? Because at this moment we are witnessing two trend pattern. On the one side, we see a lot of Chinese households are still very price sensitive. For example, if we look at the May Day holiday, we see that the total number of trips rose by 3.6%, whereas the total consumption only rose by 2.9%. So that means that per person consumption is actually declining. That means a lot of consumers are still very price sensitive. And the other aspect, we see that those high-end integrated tourist attractions are gaining much popularity, such as the seaside like Anaya. So in order to have to do this kind of sustained long-term growth and also to bring in more income, I believe there are two things that are very important. The first thing is to build more of this product varied and also integrated travel tourist attractions. So it need not be high-end, but need to be very varied and combines well with concerts, with a lot of, for example, it integrates both natural tourist attractions and also a lot of things with humanity. So I think that's very important. And the other thing is we need to have better transportation to lower end and smaller cities. So we still see that the major cities are indeed enjoying a lot of tourists. But for the smaller cities, there are also a lot of areas which a lot of the places which I visit are relatively beautiful and breathtaking. But but a lot of the first is the connection to those smaller cities, and also the connections within those cities need to be further improved before we can have a more sustained growth.
Thank you very much, Xu Fanqi, for contextualising that deep dive through the data. He is an associate professor at Peking University School of Economics. Coming up next on Global Business. The ongoing 25th China Internet Conference is expected to lay the groundwork for AI-driven digital transformation across industries.
The world economy as we know it is about to change. Global business reports highlight emerging markets, developing countries, and dynamic sectors worldwide. We feature top analysts and newsmakers to provide perspectives on every facet of business. From an on-the-ground perspective, we provide you with balanced and objective assessments. Fast, sharp, and insightful. Global Business. Only on CGTN.
Artificial intelligence is no longer an elusive cutting-edge technology. From casual daily chats and office assistants to life services, AI has fully integrated into people's routines and become a staple of digital living. A major highlight of the 25th China Internet Conference in Beijing lies in AI's shift from general popularisation to targeted in-depth development. Let's take a closer look.
Multiple innovative AI products have stood out at the exhibition, covering 3 emerging tracks: emotional companionship, merchant operation, and public welfare for the disabled. Drawing constant crowds at the booth is the newly unveiled AI bionic pet robot.
Unlike ordinary smart toys, this bionic pet runs on cutting-edge multimodal AI technology, equipped with autonomous emotion recognition and memory learning capabilities. It accurately senses touches and voice interactions, responding with affectionate, soothing and comforting gestures based on the user's mood. It also long-term stores users' living habits and chat history, gradually developing a one-of-a-kind personality unique to its owner. Designed for people living alone, pet lovers and those in need of emotional relief, this AI bionic pet fills the void of emotional companionship, turning cold smart technology into gentle daily comfort.
Beyond emotional companion products, Meituan's 24-hour AI live streaming system delivers powerful commercial innovation. Designed for small offline businesses such as restaurants, fresh food and pet stores, it allows merchants to set up a personalized live stream in just 3 minutes. The AI host operates unattended around the clock, automatically introducing products, replying to customer questions, and releasing store promotions. It effectively solves small merchants' manpower and traffic challenges, helping physical stores reduce costs and improve efficiency. In addition, the conference presents a warm, inclusive AI accessibility system specifically optimized for people with disabilities, bridging the digital gap for vulnerable groups.
For a long time, complicated interfaces and cumbersome online procedures have prevented vulnerable groups from accessing the internet equally. Our dedicated AI system optimizes all interaction logic accordingly. It eliminates complicated operations, streamlines page layouts, and is equipped with full process voice guidance, plain text graphic explanations, and intelligent auxiliary operations, drastically lowering barriers to internet access. Powered by artificial intelligence, it enables people with disabilities and special needs to independently complete daily online tasks including socializing, utility bill payments, public service reservations, and online shopping. This inclusive technology bridges the digital divide, allowing special groups to embrace digital life equally, safely, and smoothly.
China's AI industry has seen rapid growth in recent years. Official data shows that in 2025, the country's core AI industry was valued at more than 1.2 trillion yuan, or about $176.6 billion US dollars. The number of AI companies in China surpassed 6,200 last year, accounting for 16% of global AI companies. The core AI industry is expected to hit 1.7 trillion yuan, or just over $250 billion US dollars this year, according to a report released by a commercial research institute. China is ramping up efforts to promote deeper integration of AI with consumer markets. In June, China's Ministry of Commerce and 7 other government departments released a guideline document to accelerate the development of AI plus consumption. The guideline includes 17 measures to expand smart product consumption, develop new consumption scenarios and improve service delivery through AI-enabled systems. Let's discuss this further about the AI sector developments. I want to bring in Chu Qiang, a fellow of the Belt and Road Research Centre at Minzu University of China. Thanks for joining us on the show. Now, ByteDance, it recently introduced a paid tier for its AI assistant, Doubao. Yet consumer uptake has been somewhat limited despite massive industry-wide investment, reportedly more than $30 billion. This year alone, that investment. Are tech firms facing a fundamental mismatch between AI spending and viable monetisation? And what does that signal about the sustainability of the current AI race?
Well, again, I'm going to say this is a problem, but basically it's a winner's problem. Basically, the giant of the AI in the United States and China ran into this kind of the predicament, alike. I think this is a whole situation, being faced by the whole, industry. Bleeding out the money is very easy, but to earn the money is, kind of a difficult. Well, I don't think the industry is collapsing. This is very, very normal for a up and running industry, but we still need to, run out some losers and find out successful business models. Well, true, it is that not only for Doubao, but also for Grok and also for the OpenAI. And I think the subscription is actually a very difficult business model. Actually, the subscribers are not willing to pay, especially the high-end users, because the high-end users actually they want to spend the money, to do some more challenging jobs. And for the low-end users, like the ordinary individuals and families, they don't want to pay for it because most of the job or tasks that they entrust AI to do does not make money back. So basically, if you take a look at the whole investment, scenario, I think the AI industry together has already been downputting about $300 billion US. But, 78% of the AI startups basically burn out all their money, even for the front runners like the OpenAI. They have already downput more than $150 billion US, but only make back about 1/10 of the money. So I think the signal is really clear because the whole PE in the market is about 150 times. This is really, really high. It's higher than a bubble in a period of time. And also, I think the usage of the chips basically is only like 40%, which means everybody cannot afford to be the loser or lagging behind when they're building their own data center, when they're having their own chips or GPU. But when they install this whole kind of capacity, they only use 40% of it. So I think this is really looking like, in the 2000s when we see the dot-com bubble. The bubble will always go burst, but if you're not following, probably you cannot follow the real turn of the challenges. So I think that's the reason why every enterprise, they know there's a bubble, they know there's a frenzy going on, but they still want to catch on and, to show hand to all the competitors.
Where do you see the most credible path to successful AI commercialisation? Is it enterprise integration, consumer subscriptions, or perhaps an entirely new business model that we're yet to define?
Well, it's still too early to say that, Lincoln, but I think the current business model is not very successful. According to our observation, I think the 2B model is basically better than the 2C model because I think the enterprises are the most willing and most stable to pay for this kind of a result. For example, if you take a look at the portfolio, Anthropic basically have 90% of the income coming from the API or the contract with the corporate client. And I think the stickiness of the client is very, very strong. And also the subscriptions, order is also very large. And also if you're going to face the 2C subscribers, I think you still need to go back and look at the Google's business model. It's old, but still useful. Which means advertisement. Yes, they're going to use it for free. Everybody, individuals would want to use it for free, but they wouldn't mind to watch advertisement. I think Google's doing that for years and is still a successful model. So I think this is a problem, some option. You're going to look into that. I think in the future, I think the AI agent probably is not only going to charge you by the tokens, but also maybe you can share the profit by project. If their project can make money, you probably can, charge some of the percentages out of it. You probably can think AI as one of the, investment into your startup clients. So I think that can be a solution if you introduce in the blockchain, if you introduce the DAO and all kinds of the smart contract. I think the AI payment according on the tasks or the result can be possible.
So central banks, including the US Fed Reserve, are beginning to flag AI-driven demand as a potential source of inflationary pressure. Do you view this as a necessary cost of tech transformation, or are we seeing early signs of an investment bubble forming in this sector?
Well, I think in short term, the inflation can be real and true. For sure, every time it's like that. But in the longer term, I think deflation can be the trend. Well, I think currently because of the AI's investment, I think we have the data center going on, we have the chips, we have the power and the cooling systems, the data warehouse and everything. And that will definitely drive up all the fundamental investment. I think every technology revolution has all gone through this kind of space of time, like the railway, like the power, like the dot-com bubble period of time. But yes, when we have the inflation in the short run in the beginning, but later when we ultimately improved our capacity and productivity, I think in the longer run we're going to have deflation because efficiency is going to be much higher than before. So I think in the AI period of time, because AI is ultimately going to replace a lot of the manual labor, so I think it's going to be a very weird situation waiting for us in the future, which is a long, prosperous but deflation scenario waiting for us.
Thank you very much for explaining what is quite a weird situation in many ways, but making it simple for us to understand. Xu Qiang, appreciate your time. He's a fellow of the Belt and Road Research Centre at Minzu University of China. The 2026 Automotive Manufacturing Technology and Solutions Exhibition kicked off in Shanghai on Wednesday. More than 700 exhibitors are showcasing their latest technologies, including everything from welding to painting. And this year, a growing number of foreign buyers are in Shanghai to look for solutions that Chinese suppliers can offer. Chen Tong reports.
This is the leading show in the auto industry, attracting 70,000 professional visitors. Although no specific number of international visitors was revealed, many foreign faces can be seen at the show looking for supplies.
We are looking for alternatives to our actual control series and other general possibilities to have maybe better network connections and other possibilities.
I mainly was looking for some overhanging cranes and some coils and robotics, just to explore what can be the future in our factories moving forward.
There are even buyers who have nothing to do with cars, but come looking for inspiration.
We want to see whether there are new technologies related to the petroleum industry.
This exhibition has been running in Shanghai for over 20 years, and one of the biggest change this year is the growing international buyers. And these international buyers come to Shanghai not only to find car parts, but to find China solutions as well.
This is a tech firm dedicated to providing solutions for manufacturers. It produces the brain for the smart technology that can be used in production lines. Although it's useful in many scenarios, car production has been the most common demand. And this AI-embodied technology has attracted an increasing number of foreign buyers.
We officially started tapping into overseas markets in the latter half of last year. Before that, we only took small sporadic orders through distributors. Once we began handling overseas business directly ourselves last year, our revenue grew from scratch to over 10 million.
Backing such strong demand for China's car solutions is China's growing capabilities in car production and AI development. Before the opening, the organizer of the show has already received 300 purchasing inquiries from almost 100 foreign firms.
We're really thrilled to see overseas buyers taking the initiative to come to China. They come here to source products on their own, and they've openly said they trust Chinese manufacturing. They want to find Chinese solutions to serve their local markets back home. I believe this marks a fundamental shift.
China's Customs Bureau showed that car exports jumped by over 48% in the first 5 months of the year. In May alone, products in the AI-related industrial chain also contributed to almost half of China's export increase. That explains why foreign buyers are rushing to Shanghai for their smart cost solutions. Chen Tong, CGTN, Shanghai.
You're watching Global Business. Still to come. The IMF raised China's growth forecast but lowered its global projection, a clear vote of confidence in the country's expansion.
A vast land of 1.4 billion people. The world's second largest economy. Home to stories of the unexpected, the unimaginable, the breathtaking. Stories that touch the soul. Feel the speed, the passion. Enjoy spectacular natural and cultural landscapes. Feel the thrill of cutting-edge innovations. Discovering China. Global Biz. China Travel. We present a China never seen before. 24/7 at your fingertips.
The International Monetary Fund has once again shaved this year's global growth forecast to 3% from 3.1%. The fund cited AI-driven growth and investment offsetting the negative impact of the Middle East conflict. In its latest World Economic Outlook, the IMF said energy exporters outside the war zone and economies plugged into the technology-led upturn could maintain strong momentum. It also became more positive with China, raising the country's 2026 growth forecast by 0.2 of a percentage point to 4.6%. It expects global headline inflation to reach 4.7% this year before easing to 3.9% in 2027 due to energy price volatility. Dutch Minister for Foreign Trade and Development Cooperation, Sjoerd Sjoerdsma, is leading a business delegation of 17 Dutch companies on his trip to Beijing and Shanghai. Our correspondent Sarah Coates filed this report on the shifting dynamics in shipping from China to Europe's largest port, the Port of Rotterdam.
Here at the Port of Rotterdam, trade with China is easy to see. Ships arrive, containers are unloaded, trucks line up, and then goods are moved on. This is the key trading gateway into Europe. And for the Netherlands itself, trade with China is the heartbeat of the economy.
China is the decisive factor here in Rotterdam. We see ourselves also as the China gateway to Europe. If you look at the total number of containers, around 7 million, half of them are coming from Asia. Sometimes it's an extra stop in Singapore or another stop, so it's hard to see. But our guess is that around half of those containers are coming from China.
And it's not just the port handling that volume. Logistics companies deal with the goods after they arrive, storing, repacking, and then preparing for delivery.
We handle around 20,000 boxes a year from China at the moment.
But it's the flow of goods that's changing. More products are arriving from Asia, while exports to China have fallen from previous years, meaning more containers coming in and less going out.
It's a structural change that China is now changing its market from the labor-intensive market to a more highly skilled products that they're producing and looking at the other markets. And then still the European market is one of the most attractive markets for China because we are still quite rich here. I do hope that the European producers are leveling up and meeting also these new standards at China so that we get a fair competition and also more balance again in the import and export.
And this imbalance impacts shipping, road transport companies, and the huge network that moves goods from this port to the rest of the continent. Rotterdam Port gives you a real sense of what's happening in the global economy. Containers moving through here show you where goods are coming from, where they're going, and how quickly trade patterns can shift. So what is happening here shows just how closely Europe and Beijing are connected through trade. China is a major supplier of everyday goods and an extremely important market for European companies.
Every product I have, from my cutlery to my plate to the food which is on my plate, a lot of it, I think 60-70% comes from China. It's the factory of the world, and I think it's something you can't ignore.
For Rotterdam, China remains a central part of business, but as patterns change, Europe is watching very closely as to how that relationship develops. Sarah Coates, CGTN, the Port of Rotterdam.
Former Netherlands ambassador to China, Arte Oostra, sat down with us to discuss bilateral trade prospects and the wider China-EU ties.
I hope very much on the horizon, at the close horizon, is the improvement of trade possibilities. You will realize that the Netherlands were a substantial trade partner, very much also the entrance to Europe for a long time. But the difficulty always has been that there's a huge trade gap between the two countries. That basically is a matter between China and the European Union as such, because the European Union is the body responsible for European trade policy. But all the helps that bilaterally can be mobilized are helpful. And I think we also can, as we are a big importer and we used to be a substantial investor in China, we can try to fathom and to find out where the difficulties are and what we can do to diminish them.
Now to shipping through the Strait of Hormuz. It has reportedly come to an almost complete halt as the US-Iran conflict escalates. The strait is one of the world's most critical maritime choke points, with roughly 1/5 of global oil consumption passing through daily. Experts warn that the ripple effects on global supply chains could persist for much longer. Peter Oliver reports from Germany's industrial heartland of Duisburg.
For manufacturers around the world, the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz doesn't mean business immediately returns to normal. Shipping delays, higher freight costs and disrupted logistics can continue to affect industries weeks after vessels start moving again. One sector feeling those knock-on effects is metal recycling.
We use 100% obsolete scrap. We feed it into a shredder, we break it, we sort it, and then we analyze every single piece. And in the end, we get a very, very clean recycling product that can be used then again in high-quality flat steel making processes.
At this facility in Germany's industrial heartland, discarded metal is transformed into high-quality raw materials for steel makers. And it's not just old buildings or machinery. Almost anything made of metal can begin the process again.
How we look at a so-called ELV, at an end-of-life vehicle, we look at it as a rolling mine.
It looks like garbage, but it's actually one of Europe's most valuable resources. Here at TSR, discarded waste metal is shredded, sorted, and then sent for the next step of its journey. Less than 2 minutes later, it emerges from the other side of the facility, ready to enter back into the supply chains and start a new life as perhaps a car, a bus, a bridge, or anything else. But perhaps equally as important, every ton of raw materials recovered here decreases the amount we need to mine elsewhere in the world.
Those materials don't just stay in Germany. While the scrap is sourced locally, the finished recycled metals become part of international supply chains, supplying manufacturers across Europe and beyond.
Once those supply chains, those streams of goods are disrupted, of course, you have to turn to something that you have available right in front of your doorstep. Recycled products are much less vulnerable to those supply chain disruptions. In terms of resilience, recycling makes an awful lot of sense.
Industry leaders say that doesn't reduce the importance of global trade. Instead, recent disruption has reinforced the need for resilient supply chains that combine international commerce with greater use of recycled raw materials.
When global supply chains become fragile, every recycled ton produced in Europe becomes even more valuable. But resilience is not built by closing markets, it's built by keeping supply chains open, flexible and connected.
Europe's recycling industry believes the lesson extends well beyond one maritime choke point. The stronger the global supply chain, the better. But when disruption strikes, making better use of the raw materials already in circulation can help keep industry moving. Peter Oliver, CGTN, Duisburg, Germany.
And finally, to some other business headlines we're tracking for you. Oil prices spiked more than 1%. Brent crude rose to almost $79 a barrel on Thursday after fresh US strikes on Iran, but have since retreated to around $77 as of 8 o'clock GMT. The price is still hovering near one-week highs. According to research conducted by the International Data Corporation worldwide, PC shipments have dropped by nearly 5% to 68 million units, marking the first decline in 2 years following the AI-driven memory shortage in late 2025. And back-to-school spending among US households with school-aged children is expected to fall about 6% this year to roughly $30 billion on an inflation-adjusted basis, according to a Deloitte survey released Thursday. That is all we have for you on this edition of Global Business. I'm Lincoln Humphreys in Beijing. You've been wonderful company. See you next time. Goodbye for now.